Hey everybody, it's the Man Master here. I'm doing a video today. And this video is something I've had on my mind for a long time because it is something that's honestly confused me with regards to how the narratives that we're hearing from various sources nowadays really come together to create some type of truth. Or, you read between the lines or you figure out what exactly is going on with all this stuff. So, I've been thinking about doing this video for a while actually, but then I forgot about it, and then more recently I kind of got into the idea recently. So, basically what I think, well, first of all, I'm gonna say this because this is kind of the dawning of me doing my videos on my computer again, by the way. So I'm still planning on doing that, even though I'm doing it with the phone tonight. I'm just kind of getting a couple more done before I start doing it. I'm not going to do them exclusively on my computer, but I'm going to probably cut down the ones that I do on my phone quite a bit because just I have better technology with my computer, or it's just easier to fashion things on there and more space. So I always wondered about this term patriarchy and what it really means, because for one, I think men rule the world. They still do, majority of the time. Is it a bad thing or a good thing? I'm not going to make a judgment on it because it really depends on what you mean. I think if men have to take more a lot of times men have to take more responsibility in the world for what they do. This sounds like a misogynist thing to say, but you look at the way it sounds like Better Bachelor. Anyways, no, but the truth is, men have to take more responsibility a lot of the time because they're more accountable. They're held more accountable. So it could be a curse and a blessing. Now, what always bothered me about the patriarchy theory is that what it says, sometime 10,000 years ago, not 10 years ago, with the advent of agriculture, men started being the dominant player in our societies that we developed because we were just nomadic hunter-gatherers before that had equality and of any, this is the whole thing that they base it on. And a lot of this is very analogous to Christianity, where they talk about the Garden of Eden and the fall of man, and the Eve and the apple and all that shit. It's actually kind of related to that, because if you think about these theories that are out there now. So there was a fall, which is agriculture, quote unquote, and civilization. And then our utopia that we were living in is no longer here. Now the problem I have with these theories is that there's obviously there's some anthropological basis for some of them, and I'm going to get to something else that they talk about too, which I also have a problem with regards to these theories, but there's no context of what these situations were like, or how, they don't talk about how did they, what were society, they don't have enough evidence, I think, of how societies really operated back then to say, they could say hypothetically it was like this. I don't think they know all the interpersonal dynamics of these situations. I guess they can study these other cultures in other countries that have never got, or these remote cultures that have never gotten out of that. But even a lot of those, it's kind of rare to hear about some type of pure, equitable society. Or if it's not equitable, then the men and women still have different roles, even in these so-called ancient cultures that are still around. So it's very flawed, because some of these people, I think, are coming more from a social science perspective rather than a evolutionary or even anthropological perspective. So I see it like this. I see that these people are very politicized. They're very politicized in this debate. So for one, what's gained recent prominence, and I'm not going to say that this is a bad thing necessarily, but the polyamorous movement has gained a lot of traction in the last couple of years. Now, for one, their rationalization is those books like Sex at Dawn, where they talk about, well, that's how our forebears were. Why can't we be like that? I mean, for one, it doesn't really have the context of what day-to-day life was for these polyamorous societies, alleged polyamorous societies, where they all share. Two, it really doesn't talk about the negative parts of those societies, or the negative consequences of these situations. And part of civilization is trying to regulate or fix some of the problems that the chaos of no civilization has. So I'm willing to bet that a lot of times there was a lot of chaos, and there were bad things, consequences for living these lifestyles, which is obviously early man didn't really have a choice at that point, but there's got to be another side. I bought this book, Sex at Dusk, which kind of is a counterpoint to Sex at Dawn. I haven't read it. It's somewhere in my 1,000 books that I own or whatever, but because I had a friend that was so obsessed with Sex at Dawn, even though, ironically enough, he's like, I would never live that lifestyle, but it's so cool to think about as a hunter-gatherer. He used to bother me and troll me with it, because I was like, dude, I don't, whatever, I don't care, but, I think it's just flawed. I think it's flawed to prescribe humanity, especially emergent humanity, to one trait or another, or to one thing. I think that's a flawed perspective of it. There was probably multiple things going on all at once, Now this patriarchy, let's get back to the patriarchy theory. So the way a lot of feminists and a lot of social scientists would have it is that at some point, and just listening to them talk, I'm not saying that they say this, but it's almost like an implication, if you really took it to its radical conclusion, would be like this. At some point 10,000 years ago, men all got together and said, hey, we're going to rule everything. And they overpowered the women, and then they have this thing in their dick, their penis, that it's like this remote chip that makes them dominate the world or something. I don't fucking know. I'm just making this up, but that's how they would have it. But the patriarchy, I mean, it's it's an obvious reality. I'm not saying that patriarchy doesn't exist, but the way they talk about it is what do they want to replace it with? What do they, they want to replace it with equality, or what do they want to replace it to this? Now it's becoming this very ambiguous gendered person that doesn't have a sex or gender. It's a lot of the people on the left and stuff are just kind of going towards this. Doesn't really make any sense, and it's I don't really know what their end game is a lot of the time. But I certainly don't think it's all equality or anything like that. It used to be like that, I think, but it's becoming this weird thing that I don't really understand it quite a bit. Maybe I'm too old for it. The they, them thing, all this stuff. I'm just being honest. I'm pro-trans rights and stuff, but some of this kind of more ambiguous, more fluid stuff I just don't really get it. I'll just be honest, or the 47 genders, or Baskin Robbins Tumblr gender thing, whatever. But back to this idea that patriarchy was this fresh, new thing that never had been tried before, but the evil man, the first patriarchal man, emerged from the cave and said, we're going to do agriculture and we're going to dominate women. Just seems like a very flawed, dare I say, conspiracy theory to me. I mean, for one, we look at the animal kingdom, and it's usually pretty straightforward. The men have certain roles and the women have certain roles. And it doesn't mean that necessarily the men dominate. A lot of times they do, though. I'd say the majority of mammals, it's I haven't studied this at length for a long time. I'm certainly no expert on this subject. So if I get some things wrong, forgive me. But I don't think that women dominate the mammals of the earth. I don't believe that. As far as certain roles that they have, it doesn't mean that a person needs to follow that role. It just means, what my problem is when they say, oh, that role is wrong, that role is bad, it's evil because of patriarchy, so you can't follow that role. If a woman wants to follow a role or a man wants to follow a certain role, let them do that. If they don't want to, then that's fine too. My problem is when you start to like proscribe it to people as some type of like, if it's problematic, if they say it's problematic to have some type of domineering kind of vibe or energy. If that's what you do, then have at it. Now, do I think that masculinity and femininity are two different things that are, and I go beyond these hypotheses that people have given them? Absolutely. I mean, for one example, we can think about like female bosses, and like actual body language, like when they shift their body language and stuff. This is like a TED talk. I forgot the woman's name. She talked about this, but the testosterone is more generated by when women do that. And why is that? Well, because that's a male. It's a more masculine thing than when they do that. Like when women actually like stand in certain positions, they generate more testosterone because we have both a lot of the time. It doesn't make any sense to say that, and this whole theory about early man, we truly don't know how it was. They have theories about how it was, but I don't think they truly know. And there's a lot of science that goes back and forth, and I'm going to say it's inconclusive at best. I don't think that all of a sudden 10,000 years ago the evil patriarchy took over and all this shit. And I think a lot of this stuff comes from Marxism. It comes from Marxism and this idealization. And Marxism kind of comes from Christianity, if you think about it. Like some of these theories are kind of coincide with that, because if you think, there was this time that humans were more pure and good, and there's this Garden of Eden, and we were hunter-gatherers, and there was no patriarchy. But then Eve ate the apple, and the evil patriarchy took over. The snake of the penis of the evil man, like in Zardos, penis is evil, whatever. I forgot. It was a great movie. You should watch it. A lot of the concepts that I talk about are totally in that movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's hilarious too, but I love the movie, the concepts of the movie Zardos. And the funny thing is, I watched an Amoeba Records What's in Your Bag segment on YouTube with Nameless Ghost, one of the or Nameless, I forgot his name. One of the guys that played with Ghost. And he had it in his fucking bag, Zardos, and he talked about it. They showed some clips. I'm like, I have to see that. And then I watched it. I loved it. I bought it. I liked it so much. So I don't believe this whole flawed thing. Like, they're kind of projecting their own critical theory and Marxist theories onto anthropology some of the time. I think they're trying to twist the science into something that they feel more comfortable with, or they want to have projected upon the world. Now, at that said, I think some of these theories are probably correct. Maybe that we were hunter-gatherers. Maybe we were more polyamorous. But like saying it's natural human to have an equitable society, and like not equitable, but like have men and women do the same thing, and have polyamorous relationships. It's just natural. I mean, there's a political intent with these books and stuff, like Sex at Dawn. These people feel like they were oppressed, or they were stigmatized for their sexual choices, which is stupid in the first place, of course. Not that I don't believe in doing that in the first place, stigmatizing people for their choices. But at the same time, saying like, it's natural to be polyamorous, I think it's a very flawed thing. With little, 10 years from now, we could find out that it's natural being monogamous, just like people used to think. I don't even know if it was like Darwin or some of those guys used to think that monogamy was natural among a lot of humans, or among men or women versus men. And there's a lot of different factors, a lot of different complicated things that happen, a lot of complicated, not machinations, but just the way that things work in the world and in our life and society and as humans. There's a lot of things that happen. It's very complicated. I think it's more complicated than just this dichotomy, like, we're we were either like these hunter-gatherer, polyamorous, happy, shiny, happy people, you know, fucking each other, and everybody took care of the kid in the tribe and shit. It's just like we were either that, or we're this evil, evil hierarchical, patriarchal society of farmers and, you know, these kings and all this shit. It's just so dichotomous and so dualistic, and I think it's stupid. I think it's really stupid to say one way or the other that we're this or that, or we used to be this and now we're this. It's like it's too oversimplistic. I think there were a lot of other factors, a lot of different it's a lot of different things going on back then that we don't know the full extent of how things operated or why they operated that way. There was a lot of things with weather, a lot of different types of things that happened, you know, just a lot of different things. But yeah, I don't think it's right to say that patriarchy was this evil, more current advent that oppresses women and all this stuff. I think men and women are different a lot of the time. Not all of them. You know, I think men and women have different roles that they want to play because of their hormones and because of their brains, because they're different. I mean, and that's a very verboten idea in 2022. 1995, you know, even a lot of liberals could get away with that, but now they can't because they have to like placate their crazy woke audience about all this stuff. But I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I mean, of course time will tell, because if we see certain things happen in our world, and, you know, I mean, there's tides of change that go back and forth. There's like the fourth turning concept, you know, which is pretty fascinating. I don't know if I buy it or not, but, you know, the idea is that the gender roles do get more similar, you know, and they're in a certain cycle of time, and then they go back to more traditional, and that's about to happen allegedly. I don't know, according to like these writers of the fourth turning, because I'm part of the nomad generation, you know, sort of bordering on the artist. I think it's the artist generation, like millennials, the artist, and the Generation X is the nomads. I can't remember, but or they call it the 13th generation. But it's weird stuff. But I don't buy it. I just don't buy. I mean, not the fourth turning. I mean, I don't buy this whole idea. And I think a lot of these professors and a lot of these philosophers are very influenced by critical theory. I don't mean critical race theory. That's just a branch of that. Critical theory, Marxism, all these different ideas, and there's nothing wrong with some of what Marx said in Marxism, but when you're basing your entire reality of your academic life on one person and one person's influence throughout the, you know, distilled into these other thinkers, I think it's kind of a dangerous precedent. And I think it truly warps their scientific analysis. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that there are some truths to what they say, but I think that this is coming from that. I do think that this is coming from that kind of, those types of, that type of thinking, that type of analysis, where it's there's very much it's very much through that lens. Oh, well, I read Marx, and I read this critical theory, and, you know, it seems like it would be, we were in this utopia of before we, you know, the caveman was a utopian Marxist, and he had 4 wives, but they also had 5 husbands, and everybody shared in the child rearing, and yeah, really. And then someone hit the other guy on the head with a club, and then they threw the club in the air, and then they saw the monolith and all this shit or whatever. I don't fucking know. I'm just saying. So a lot of it's bullshit. I think it's bullshit. I don't think it's bullshit that it's like, I think it's 50% there, and then there's another side of it, like with anything. Maybe there was other things going on with these societies and stuff that humanity evolved into agriculture. Maybe it's part of our evolution to evolve into agriculture and a civilization. They don't want to say that, though, because it's like they're misanthropic, sort of environmentalists, like intertwined thing. Nothing wrong with misanthropy or environmentalism, but a lot of times they're intertwined, mixed with like Marxist theories and like these left-wing kind of view on science and nature and stuff. Like, you know, on the opposite side is social Darwinism and fucking like, oh, we're all for themselves, and the men have always ruled the earth, and you know, the men have always ruled the earth with power. Anyways, if someone knows what the power thing, what album that comes from, please comment. It's from this very obscure album that my friend had. It's pretty funny, but if you can guess, I'll send you $5 in the mail if you can guess what album that's from. Like, if any of my audience does. If they can remember what that's from. Power. Like, it's very, very low voiced guy saying that, but it's a little bit obscure. A little bit very obscure. But yeah, I think it's pretty stupid to prescribe things like that way. I just think it's very oversimplistic. I just don't think that humans operate like that. There's no way. Let me ask you this. So let's say humans are very much like chimpanzees, and I'm not sure I don't think they have a matriarchy as far as I know. I think it is patriarchy, and chimps, I think there are apes that have a matriarchy. I'm not remembering this correctly. But let's just say, for the sake of this argument, okay, we're derived from chimps or whatever in evolution. And, you know, it's 90% a patriarchy, meaning the men do. I don't even mean like they rule over with the female chimp. I just mean like they have different roles, motherhood, you know, the child bearing, and they have the cultivating thing, and the men go hunt or whatever, or, you know, whatever you want to, however you want to see it. Like this more masculine versus feminine thing. We evolved from that, and then we reverse it because we're hunter-gatherers, and we have this ideal, or we're the opposite now for tens of thousands or millions, half a million years or whatever, and then we go back to the sexual or gender dichotomies. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, why would you go backwards with that? Like, it doesn't. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, it just doesn't. Some of this shit is just fucking. It seems like it's just fucking intellectual masturbation / nonsense. It's like there is a difference between masculine and feminine energies. It's as new age as that sounds. I believe it. And estrogen and testosterone. There is a difference between these two things. I'm sorry if that challenges some people. I'm sorry if that's so horrible to talk about. Or doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference, these things. Yeah, it does. It makes a difference with a lot of things. The chemicals that are running through your body, not just soy. I'm just kidding. I mean, do influence who you are as a person. My God, what a fucking verboten, terrible concept to talk about nowadays. Oh my God, there's no difference between the sexes, or like it's all patriarchal science. That's what they say. That's what I've read. I've read feminists. They say most science is patriarchal science, so it should be debunked. Like differences between like women being like on average like smaller than men, or weaker muscular with muscles. Their muscles are weaker and stuff. That's all patriarchal science. It's not true. Then give me a fucking study that says the opposite, that a woman wrote or something. Fuck you, bitch. You're fucking full of shit. That's about all.